Hello, today we're going to be looking at my digital component for the content literacy. We are learning about animation today, and in this lesson we're going to be designing characters. So first of all, I'd like to think, what are some characteristics of good and evil characters? I was thinking about Thor and Loki when I designed this list, but when I started thinking about it, I could pretty much add every good and evil character from James Bond to comic books, and they would all fit these characteristics. There are some anomalies, but it's pretty comprehensive. So, good characters are usually light, they're muscular and strong, they're calm, hopeful, optimistic, fair and just, they're humorous, they're caring. Evil characters are often dark-colored, they're weak and scrawny, they're excitable or depressed, they're dishonest and sneaky, and they're usually cruel and very spiteful. So I would have my children come up with this list themselves, but for lack of time today. I would then give them this graphic novel. It's from Frank Miller's 300, and I thought this is wonderful when Xerxes meets King Leonidas for the first time. And historically, that's completely impossible. However, yeah, in literature, anything is. So, what I noticed about Xerxes and Leonidas, and I compared it to my list back here, was that Leonidas is muscular. He's portrayed as a simple man. He's undecorated. He's brave. He's just a good-looking guy. And I also kind of started noticing after I typed this that beards in our modern era seem to designate a good guy. The traits of Xerxes are he's non-muscular, he's smooth-faced, he's very decorated, and he uses slaves as steps, as you can see over here in this first panel. And none of those things are a bad thing for a person, but when we're designating good and evil characters, it's helpful to have those stereotypes in mind. We could also talk about stereotypes and what different things mean to different people and how those are just usually biases in our own mind and they can be very wrong. I also wanted to point out this middle pane because I just thought the contrast between positive and negative images was really creative. So we would then, after we analyzed our image from 300, we would start creating our own. And we would also make sure we got our target standard to choose from a range of material and methods of artistic practices, following or breaking established conventions to plan the making of a series of work of art and design based on a theme, idea, or concept. And today we're probably going to be working more on the concept area. So this is Gus the Great. He's a character I made. He's my good guy. And what I found is that usually one character comes really, really easy, and then the second character you really have to work about and think a lot more. He's Gus the Great. He's a wizard. He can conjure flames, and he likes pointy shoes. He's really good at setting things on fire. And when does my character exist? We're supposed to be answering who, what, when, why, where, and how questions. And those are just a really easy basis for kids to start thinking and developing their character. So we already covered who. He's Gus. He's a wizard. When does my character exist? It could be the present. It could be a parallel universe to our own. It has to be somewhere magical. And then I figured out it's the land of Squint. And Gus and his gift of fire will illuminate the kingdom. And my biography of character doesn't really need to be super detailed. It just needs to give me a really good idea about where my story is going to be going. I figured out that the kingdom of Squint is ruled by an evil sorcerer named Bob the Dastardly, and he likes the dark, but I'm not sure why yet. Gus needs to exist to fight the terror of Bob the Dastardly, and of course where this is the land of Squint. And then just a little over blurb is Gus the Great lives in the land of Squint. With the gift of fire, Gus will take on the evil sorcerer Bob the Dastardly, who put out the light. Will Gus be able to save the kingdom in time? And then let's look at Bob the Dastardly. He's also a wizard, and he's the current king of the land of Squint. He usurped the throne because he believes Squint should be filled with eternal darkness because Bob is dastardly. He lives in the same world as the other wizard, and I had to really think hard about why Bob would want the world to be dark. And Bob has photosensitivity, and he wishes to plunge the world into eternal darkness to rid himself of migraine headaches. He doesn't realize how this affects other people because he's very selfish. So there, we just got two characters with backgrounds and plots and motives, and we can base their future actions on this list. So my overblurb about Bob the Dastardly is he just wants everyone to go away and leave him alone in his castle, with the lights of the world forever extinguished. How far will Bob go to get rid of his photosensitivity problem? And then, if we look at content literacy, lesson number 2, we're going to be learning about storyboards. And storyboards are just brief, I guess you could call them comic strips would be storyboards. There's all sorts of storyboards, but it's the framework and the underpinnings of every movie, every animated film, everything you ever see has had a whole storyboard written about it before the film camera was ever turned on. So this one is from Jurassic Park, and this one's kind of difficult because you read it up from top to bottom, left to right. So this might look familiar. This is from Jurassic Park, and this is the scene where the Velociraptor comes through the ceiling. And it goes frame by frame. And then if we watch our movie here, it will also go frame by frame, and it will match up to that storyboard in an amazing way. I didn't do my homework, and so I don't have my Jurassic Park video ready. So, if we watch this link, it will show us what's going on. If we make our own storyboard, it just needs to have basic shapes, and it needs to tell what's going on. So I hope you gathered that the good wizard got bonked by the bad wizard, but he discovered sunglasses in his pocket and gave them to Bob. And Bob's photosensitivity went away, and now he can hang out in the sunlight, and everything's solved and everything's good. So, lesson number 3, digital literacy, stop motion animation. This would be a little bit more difficult. This is all about kind of visualizing what's going on and watching people do an assignment. So I included multiple films that we would watch, including Wallace and Gromit, and then how to make a stop motion animation, and then some puppet animation basics. And I would not be object to having the kids explore other ways to animate, as long as they were confident they could finish something and they were persistent with it. I did a little stop animation film. It could be a stop animation film. I didn't set it up like that. I mentioned that I wanted to show how to make an armature, and this would be kind of a how-to guide. And we would start by twisting up wire, and twisting and twisting, and adding a couple more pieces of wire for arms, and putting the jumble of wire into an organized fashion to make legs, and then teach the child how to position and create an armature that they could work off of. They could add clay to this, and then we could just go around the art room and look at our materials in a different way and apply them to our character. And let's see if I can find my clay fellow. This is made for an advanced art class, so we would have covered most of the basics of how to make a face and how to make kind of a body form by now. So we could easily use sculpture clay and make a bendable under frame and teach them how to do stop motion animation. It's very difficult, it's very time consuming, and I worry that I might have bit more than I could chew doing this with high schoolers. However, they're also the ones that are most patient with that kind of thing and probably could benefit from it the most by getting their ideas into motion and publish a working animation. So this does give all sorts of potential for kids to take their creativity, their writing, and make it into a full-blown story that could be published and enjoyed by others.